It's a nice water blade. Good afternoon. I'm very sunny, very warm. Got my carer. So we're out for another walk along the riverbank. So that means some more stories. Every so often we had to go out to people who'd injured themselves, and in order to ascertain the extent of the injury we had to remove some clothing. Sometimes it was just easy to cut a trouser leg off, have a look at a broken leg, deal with it, put them on the back of the ambulance. They're never going to like having the clothes cut off because it's expensive. Take for instance motorcyclists, fantastic leathers. We had tools capable of slicing straight through that, but the motorcyclist would endure immense pain as long as we promised not to cut his leathers. No. So we used to give them Entonox, gas and air. Pregnant ladies love that kind of thing. Anyway, so this story is about 7 years ago, and we got sent to a farm, an equestrian riding school, and there was a young girl, 17 I think, and a horse had refused to jump, pushed its front legs in the floor, and the rider just went sailing over the top, landed in a heap on the fence, bounced off the fence onto the floor. Painful. So when we arrived, she's hobbling around, clutching her arm, mucho paino, and we says, right, let's get you on the back of the ambulance, but we're going to have to start taking items of clothing off so we can get down to skin, examine you, deal with the pain, and then organise the next course of action, which in this case was hospital. So every item of clothing I cut off this girl, she told me the price, and she was totting up every item of clothing to a point we got to £150 worth of clothing I just chopped into pieces. Found out that she'd damaged her shoulder, broken it in a couple of places, and she needed hospital. And I remember her saying to me, do not cut my bra off, it's very expensive. I says, there's no need to, no need to. I can see your shoulder from there, not a problem, your bra's safe. So all the way to hospital she's telling me how much money it's cost her, and I couldn't do anything at all. And when we got to hospital, I told the nurse, look, I've just cost this woman 150 quid cutting her clothes off, don't cut a bra off. And the nurse says, if the bra needs to come off, it's got to come off. And I'm like, oh, please. And then while the curtains were closed and I was outside, I heard a snip of scissors, a shriek of anguish, and somebody shouting, more expense. Anyway, I thought nothing of it. I'd signed over my patient, she was dealt with, she was looked after. And then about 2 months later I saw her in Costa, and she was with an older woman, I think it was a mother, and right across the shopping centre she just shouted, that's the man who cut all my clothes off, it cost me £150. Great. Find me a hole and swallow me up. She's alright now though. McCain's, where your chips come from. Story number 2. We were on a night shift, so we had paramedic, myself, senior emergency technician, and we had a student paramedic, a lovely girl, and we got sent out to a RTC, road traffic collision. Now they're called RTCs, road traffic collisions, because they stopped calling them RTAs, road traffic accidents, citing the fact that you can avoid accidents. Not everybody can do that. So this was two people reported in a car. The car had gone through a T-junction, jumped over a ditch, gone through a steel fence, spiked fence, and ended up in a small copse of trees. So we arrived on scene and we didn't find the driver. Driver had absconded, run away, and he'd left an absolutely beautiful young lady in the front seat, completely calm, but another one with a shoulder that was not looking good, shall we say. So we had to dig our way through the undergrowth, get to this young lady, and we sent in our student paramedic because she was female, and says, you know, can you sort of deal with that, we'll support you. And she was absolutely fine. And then I says, right, we need to get you out and get you in the ambulance. And this young lady said, I'm not leaving until you get my Louboutins. So I looked at my mate and I'm like, what's Louboutins? I've no idea what a Louboutin is. Whereas the student paramedic, she was jumping up and down. She says they're fancy shoes. And I'm thinking, no, we don't want an incident with fancy shoes. I don't want any Louboutin, apparently Christian Louboutin. But anyway, the patient said, I'm not coming out until I get my Louboutins. So we were searching all over this car until we found a pair of red shoes, Louboutins. So then, as we showed them to the patient, she says, right, I'll get out now. So we manhandled her out of the vehicle onto a stretcher, and she held onto her Louboutins all the time. Despite being in a lot of pain, she wouldn't let go of those Louboutins. And when we put her in the ambulance, she had to have the Louboutins at the side of her, and when she got to hospital, she had to have the Louboutins at the side of her. And then almost every nurse in the department went to have a look at these Louboutins. £600 a pair. Cheap pair apparently. 600 quid? Oof. You could get a koi for that. My favourite perch. Big old tree stump. Well, look at that. Our ambulance coming over. I think that was a MD Explorer, the same one that I went in, 2017, 4 years ago now. Wow. A lot of people say, what kind of patients did you meet? I mean, the manners. And I've met multimillionaires, I've met famous people, I've met people who live on the worst council estates, who have just got nothing. Prostitutes, drug addicts, people of all ages, and you can never guess how you're going to get treated. I have been to the worst halls in this area and had the most impeccable manners and thanks from people who have got nothing. absolutely nothing, yet spoken to like an utter dog by some people who've got everything. You could never guess, you could never tell. About 10 years ago, 2012, 9 years ago, excuse me, I got sent on a backup, myself and a paramedic, on a DSA, double staffed ambulance, to back up an RRV, a rapid response vehicle. So the rapid response vehicle had got there, dealt with the situation impeccably, and basically required transport to take this patient to hospital. An elderly gentleman, a lot of problems, mainly heart problems. And when we arrived, I introduced myself, my colleague introduced himself, and he was sat on the chair and he wasn't looking too good. And the paramedic got the ECG out, showed us the ECG, and we were like, oh, he needs to go to hospital quite quickly, he needs some intervention. So I went over to the gentleman and I said, right, my name's Steve, we've got to get you on a chair, we're going to strap you in the chair and then we're going to wheel you outside. And he said, oh, I feel a bit sick. And I said, that's okay, we can deal with that when we get in the ambulance. And I got him on the chair, wrapped him up in a blanket because it was quite cold, pulled the strap on the belt on the chair, tipped him backwards, and he arrested. His heart went into a shockable rhythm, thankfully. So I put him straight on the floor, undid the belt. We administered one shock, and as soon as that shock has been delivered, you get back on the chest and continue CPR, because it's only a split second, the delivery, so you're not gonna get any shock. And I was just about to put my hands on his chest, and he opened his eyes, and he just said, hello. And I was shocked. I was looking right at him and I said, hello. He says, what happened? And I says, oh, we just had to lay you on the floor because you had a bit of an episode. He's like, oh, I still feel a bit sick. And I just thought, I'm glad about that. I'm glad you feel something. His wife came in and said, did he die? And I'm thinking, oh no. But then his wife said, oh, he's died lots of times. Right, okay. Took him to hospital. 2 weeks later, we got a fantastic letter thanking all of us personally for what we did for this gentleman. Still got the letter. It's a train. Some people have asked me, what is my favourite patient? And being a bloke, you might expect me to say 25-year-old swimsuit model. No, not at all, not at all. Young girls, young boys, pathetic. Middle-aged men, awful. Little old ladies, solid gold. If we ever went to war, God forbid, I would just round up all the little old ladies in the UK and give them a gun. We could never lose. They're just absolutely rock solid. The amount of injuries that I've seen that little old ladies have sustained have been horrific. we found a little old lady at the bottom of some steps. She's had a fall. Her femur had snapped at the top, neck of femur as we called it. And she was hanging onto the newel post, almost trying to stand up. And I kept saying to this lady, please just stay where you are, let's get your pain under control and we'll get you to hospital. And her reply was, if you get me to my feet, I'll put the kettle on. Blimey.
So welcome to the Old Neen. This is the top of the Old Neen where it's just come off the new cut. The new cut's the dead straight bit goes to the sea. This is Stanground Lock, which is where you get onto the middle level, which is one of the main parts of the fens in Cambridgeshire. There's 3 levels apparently, and this is the middle level, which is the biggest one. Down towards that way is a flood relief channel. Just the other side of the sluice gate, called Morton's Leam, and that was dug by apparently Bishop Morton in about the 14th century. That's one of the oldest drainage channels around this area. These fields are all the washes. This is Stanground Wash, which is actually a site of special scientific interest because of the birds that we get in the summer, in the winter, sorry, and it's part of the flood storage system for Peterborough. So when this rises, as it did quite spectacularly over Christmas, New Year, it all just floods out onto the washes, and then where the railway's running, which we might not see a train go past, but that bank is part of the flood defences that the train runs on. And then there's more washes further downstream, towards Whittlesea, and then further out, which just keeps our feet dry.
Told you it were a skull and crossbones, didn't I? Right, I've got waylaid, so we've got to catch up with Cat. So we got sent to a job, night shift, 1 o'clock in the morning, overdose. We got to a, let's say, not very pleasant area of the world to find RRV, rapid response, keep up. And we turned up in a DSA, double staffed ambulance, to find a female laid in the middle of the road, and the paramedic was what we call bagging her, blowing oxygen into her lungs because the rate at which you were breathing was terrible. So just as a little bit of an experiment, put your hand on your chest, count the amount of times your chest inflates over a 60-second period, and it's probably around 12 to 20. It depends what books you read, but about 12 to 20, unless you've got breathing condition, in which case it could be different. So I'm probably breathing about 16 at the moment. She was breathing at 2, and she'd shot herself up with some substance that basically depresses the respiratory system, and if you put too much in, stops the respiratory system, if I could speak. Got the dog's teeth in, I think. So as the paramedics bagging, you always go to the first person on scene, man or woman, don't matter, they're in charge, and you ask, right, what do you need? And he just said, we need to put some naloxone in, or Narcan, 400 micrograms, which basically takes away the effects of the drug that they've taken. Sometimes you need an awful lot. I think the maximum dose is it 4,400 micrograms, milligrams? It's been a while, might be micrograms. I'll get back to you. Anyway, they call it the, I'm not going to swear, but they call it the F-off drug. Because if it reacts too quickly, they wake up and says, why don't you F off? That drug cost me 30 quid to inject, whereas the naloxone costs about 40p. So I put 400 micrograms in. In fact, I've caught up with Cat now. Cat, naloxone.
Yes.
400 micrograms or milligrams?
Micrograms.
Micrograms. God, memory's fading being retired. So I think we put 800 micrograms in and her respiratory rate started to lift. So we were winning. And then when we got it back to normal, we got her in the ambulance and we said, we need to go to hospital. She flatly refused. I am not going to hospital. I've been too many times. I am not going. Simple as that. We asked her why. She said, I've got to get home to my kids. Great. But as she was compos mentis, we had to give her a loading dose and send her on her way. Such is life.